Most MBA students go into consulting or investment banking, but if you're wondering how you can make money and actually have an impact, well, I have a sector that you may not have considered before, and it's probably not one that was even on your radar. It is the energy and climate tech sector, and it is one of the fastest growing sectors among MBAs today. Just a note that for this video, I will be using the words climate and energy kind of interchangeably. While there are differences, the energy sector is typically focused on the demand for energy, whereas climate tech is focused on reducing climate emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and kind of mitigating the effects of climate change. In my mind, energy fits into climate because how we use energy directly impacts the effects of climate on the world. Why energy and climate, and why now? First of all, the demand for energy, especially clean, renewable energy, and the demand for climate solutions is increasing. This is because of the growing population, which is urbanizing. And with a growing population comes a growing demand for energy. Another reason is that climate change is becoming an extremely important and talked about subject. We are seeing the impacts of tornadoes hitting Chicago and extreme typhoons in Southeast Asia and, just really crazy, intense weather patterns that are changing, and there is a growing demand for solutions to make sure that we can combat those changes so that we can all live in the world that we want to live in. Because of this, there are more and more and more jobs coming about to meet the needs of the increasing amount of solutions that are needed to combat energy and climate. Energy and climate is a high growth sector. Global investment in the climate tech space is expected to reach $270 billion in 2025. That is just 2 years from now. This growth is driven by a number of factors, like government policies like the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, consumer demand, and technological innovation. On the other hand, global energy demand is expected to increase by 2.1% between the years 2020 and 2040. And this growth is driven by a number of factors such as population growth, economic growth, and urbanization. Thirdly, the energy sector is undergoing a major transformation. First of all, it's shifting away from fossil fuels and incorporating more clean, renewable energy, such as solar, wind, battery storage, green hydrogen, things like that. Along with that, the energy sector is trying to become more equitable to make sure that energy and access to energy actually reaches the people that need it the most. And oftentimes, those are people not only that are in rich urban areas, but also poor urban areas, rural areas, and other areas that are often forgotten. And finally, the climate tech and energy sector is extremely high paying. There are some very, very specialized skill sets and knowledge that are required to work in the energy sector and climate tech sector. However, because there is such a demand for solutions within this space, it's kind of an all hands on deck. They need more and more people to be able to jump on the bandwagon and work in this sector. And so what we're seeing in the sector is that they're actually looking for people with diverse perspectives and backgrounds. So if you don't have a background in energy or climate tech, it's really not a problem at all. They still want you in that space because you can bring different perspectives and ideas that maybe people only working in energy or people only that have, backgrounds in energy might miss. And so actually having a diverse background and then wanting to work in the energy and climate tech sector is actually seen as a really huge asset today. So you're probably wondering what career paths are in the energy and climate tech space. And when I mean career paths, I'm thinking like, what skill sets do you want to learn, or what skill sets do you have already that you could bring to the table? During business school, I found that I really liked my finance courses, so I decided to concentrate my degree on learning more about energy and also finance, so pursuing sort of the renewable energy finance route. However, there are so many different functions within energy and climate tech space. It's actually pretty amazing. Some of these include business development, marketing, consulting, operations, supply chain, and even working on the technology itself. So both the hard assets and the software needed to run the assets as well. There's also a number of different companies and roles that you can explore within the climate tech and energy sector as well. And it's not just limited to working in utilities. So beyond utilities, you have your independent power producers like AES or NextEra, and these are the people that manage and operate the assets, the solar farms, the wind turbines, and distribute that energy to utilities. That's the route I decided to go through because I wanted to really gain credibility within the energy sector. And what better way to do that than by working at as close to a utility as I could possibly get. You then have your developers like Ørsted that develops wind turbines, or SunPower that develops residential solar panels. You also have CPG brands like Clorox or Kraft Heinz or even Albertsons. You have your consultants like Deloitte and McKinsey. You have your banks like JP Morgan, Citibank, and even more specific investment banks that are related to the energy sector like Marathon Capital. So you have your startups like Charger Help or BlockPower. You also have your tech companies like Tesla or Proterra or Climeworks. And there's so many different areas within climate tech and energy as well, right? Like there's energy and the production of energy, the distribution, the transmission of energy. You have the operations and maintenance of different tech that uses that energy. For example, Charger Help is a startup that is focused on making sure that EV charging stations are actually operable and are working properly so that consumers can actually charge their vehicles on the road. You've got companies like BlockPower that are retrofitting homes and buildings by putting in heat pumps into the buildings. There are so many cool companies. Another one is Climeworks, which is doing direct air capture facilities. So the breadth and with climate tech and energy is so broad that there's really a space for everyone to find something that they're potentially interested in. And finally, the energy and climate tech sectors are growing rapidly. Last year, when the tech companies were doing their layoffs, and honestly, they're still laying off quite a bit, the energy companies were hiring like crazy. For reference, my company hired 600 people in the last year and a half because there's just so much demand. There's so much work that they're getting that they need more people to help out and actually execute on the projects that are needed. If you're looking to do some pretty cool work, have a long-lasting impact on the world, and make some money too, and might I add, have pretty good work-life balance, I strongly urge you to consider careers in the energy and climate tech space. Want to know how I broke into the climate tech and energy space with zero experience? Check out my video on how I was able to pivot my career during my MBA, and my other video about my experience interning at a large-scale utility and independent power producer company.